Oh my goodness. You are such an inspiration. Wow, you really are. You're so strong. Can I pet your service dog? Ugh. 1, 2, 3, let's go! We are artists, parents, teachers, good guys, bad guys, students, leaders. I'm not your inspiration, yeah, I'm fully who I am. Got my own expectations that don't fit into your plans. I'm not your sad story, so I wrote it in this song. Everything you know about disability is wrong. Yeah, everything you know. Yeah, everything you know about disability is wrong.
Hey listeners, welcome to another episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong.
And on today's podcast, we have Chelsea Bear.
Chelsea Bear is a full-time content creator based in Florida who shares her experiences of life on social media with the handle @RealChelseaBear. She loves to travel, spend time with her loved ones, attend concerts, cook, and so much more. She shares about her experiences of having cerebral palsy on social media with educational, fun, and lighthearted posts that strive to create acceptance and awareness for people with disabilities.
She earned her bachelor's degree in communication with a specialization in public relations from Florida Gulf Coast University in 2015, and she worked in public relations for over 7 years until transitioning to a career in social media.
Welcome to the podcast, Chelsea. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Before we get started, we're going to do some audio descriptions for our blind or low vision listeners. So I'm Erin, and I have red hair, blue eyes, and I'm wearing a red long sleeve shirt.
This is Lily speaking. I am a white presenting multiracial person. I am 27 years old and I have brown hair and green eyes. Depending on what the cut of the camera is, you can see that I have a bookshelf behind me with a lot of awesome disability literature and a bunch of STEM toys on it. I'm wearing my usual black turtleneck, but it's a little cold in my apartment today, so I'm wearing a gray Easter Steels branded sweatshirt because I love to rep the brand. And throughout the episode, I'll probably play with one of my STEM toys as we talk, which is a blue and green snake-like toy today. Chelsea, you want to go ahead and give your description?
Yeah, definitely. So this is Chelsea speaking. I'm a white woman with dark brown hair. My eyes are also dark brown, and I'm wearing a maroon long sleeve shirt. And then depending on the cut, I'm in an office setting with my mobility scooter behind me. I'm sitting in a black chair and just in kind of an office room.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, let's get into the interview portion.
So before we start really getting into the interview, we like to ask all of our guests, since the name of our podcast is Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong, what do people get wrong about you and your disability?
That is a great question to start off with. I think for me, and hopefully everyone listening is going to be on the same track and way of thinking as me, but with a physical disability, I think my whole life I always get people assuming that I can't do certain things intellectually, or go to school, have a career, just live life, travel, have these experiences. So I think a lot of the time I find myself having to prove, I guess, which everyone in this room understands what that's like. But that is normally the first thing, is just dealing with those assumptions people may have about me based on the way that I walk.
Yeah, I feel like that is the kind of recurring, whether it's when we're talking about physical disabilities, intellectual, developmental, anything. It's just we're always battling assumptions. And
yeah, that's the main way to say it, break it down.
yeah, and maybe that's like part of the human experience in general and like many intersectional identities, but I think you do a really great job on your social media of like not necessarily like breaking assumptions and making it all about the assumption, but just being a cool lifestyle influencer. And like, I think that in itself probably changes a lot of people's assumptions. I love your content, and listeners, if you don't follow her, you should be following Chelsea. She's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been following you for quite a long time, and I just love like how open you are without falling into like this inspirational framework in your content, which I think is really important for people to like understand that we're not here to be inspirational. We're just living our lives.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. And I agree. I think there is a very fine line there that I try to stay more on the side of education and just sharing the realness of my life. And of course, some people take that as inspirational, and not saying people with disabilities can't be inspirational, but I don't ever want my content to just be, inspiration porn where I'm showing like, oh, I'm so amazing because I'm going to the grocery store. I'm just like, no, this is what it's like going to the grocery store. I have to do these things, but it doesn't make me, this big inspirational person. So yeah, it's a fine line, but I always try to shift it in that way.
Yeah, go ahead, Lily.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in like the world today where influencing is like, a full career that lots of people have, it's like interesting because there are tons of influencers, disabled and non-disabled, who like that's kind of the point, is to show what you do in everyday life. So there is like, if anyone, is like, oh, this is inspirational, it's like, well, I mean, there's lots of non-disabled influencers that are going to the grocery store and being like, come with me to Trader Joe's. So like, why is that?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And I mean, a lot of my content at the beginning started going viral just showing how I walk.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a lot of negative comments about that sometimes because I walk the way that I do. And to me, when you look at a regular, let's say like fashion influencer, they're always just showing them walking in different outfits, and that's not controversial. So I think it's just interesting the way it can be perceived sometimes, just because I do have that disability component in it too.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the like negative comments, I feel like that leads perfectly into Erin, the question. You can go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, sure. So as we mentioned in your bio, you started out with a career in PR before switching to social media. So after working there for 7 years in PR, you must really know like the ins and outs of social media, the negatives, the positives. But how did you prepare yourself for this career in social media, and what has it been like jumping into that?
That is a great question. I always believe that my career in public relations helped me for this. And while everything I did in PR was more media facing and trying to get my clients in different news outlets and stories and stuff, it really helped me learn about how brands work, what's important to brands, their specific values, their specific talking points, and all of those things that now translate into my content when I am working with brands or just sharing my own personal life and the things that I do. I think it definitely prepared me to have, which I think I've always naturally had, but just a brain that works in communication first. That was an interesting way to say it, but I just always have really loved communication and writing, and having to do it through the lens of a brand for so long. It was actually pretty refreshing to translate it back to myself once my social media started growing the way that it did, unexpectedly, by the way. I did not plan for this or expect it. But I think because my platform did grow from such a genuine, unexpected place, having the background I did in communication, now that I was kind of my own client and I could apply everything I've learned with media, coaching my clients and all of that now I'm the one just doing it for myself, which was kind of refreshing in a way, because I don't need to follow the handbook of a certain brand or their talking points. I'm like, no, these are the talking points that are most important to me. They're genuine. I came up with them myself, and I don't need to, train someone else on it, because it's just me and who I am. So it's been really helpful in all aspects, especially content creation is storytelling. And of course, if you're doing it from a brand, you're trying to sell something. I'm not trying to sell something. I'm just telling my lived experiences. So it's just been kind of overlapping in the way of the skills I learned. I've been easily able to apply to this kind of new career that now I've been doing for a couple of years.
That's awesome. I'm interested. So you said that it was not expected. So you didn't like decide to make the shift into social media. Was there like a certain post that took off, or was it just like over time growth and then you were like, I think I could do something with this?
I definitely got to a point where I was managing my social media and my job in PR at the same time. I think before the pandemic, I had already kind of started a blog on the side where I was writing about things I was going through. And then I'd kind of just post on my personal Instagram a picture and be like, hey, friends, I just posted a blog if you want to read it. And I was doing that kind of on and off for a couple months. Then when the pandemic hit, I'm very grateful I didn't lose my job. But of course, nights, weekends, I was just at home. I wasn't traveling. I wasn't meeting up with family and friends. So then I started putting more time into creating social content. But again, it like really wasn't ever intentional of growing. It was kind of just like, I'm going through some things and I want to talk about it, because I never really talked about it with people in my life, which is really interesting now, that given it's really all I talk about on my platforms. And then once in 2020, Instagram Reels came out, and I posted a video of myself walking, which was a really big decision for me. But I had been doing so many written descriptions or written blog posts or captions describing how I walked. And I was starting to attract just a couple more people to my platform. And I felt like I was giving a disservice by not just sharing a video, just to relate with other people so they can understand what I'm writing with that visual component. And then that video blew up. And then I just started posting more and more, linking back to different topics that I just felt other people thought were uncomfortable. And I'm like, it's just part of my life, and then those videos just started going viral. And then I had this platform and I kind of had to decide between the two. And I was so passionate about the conversations I was having on social media that it just made sense for me to give it a try and see what I can do with it. So
That's awesome. I'm so glad
yeah.
that you decided to do that, because it honestly makes a ton of sense, like knowing your content, that it did come kind of organically and authentically. I think that's why it's like successful and you're fun to watch videos of, because it's clear that like you're just sharing what you want to talk about. And I feel like content is better when the people who are making it want to make it. That's why we like making this
Yeah.
podcast, because it's like we want to have these
Yeah.
conversations. It's
Oh,
fun.
exactly. And whenever people ask me, my advice for being an influencer, I always, the first thing I gravitate towards is, why are you doing it? Like, do you have a purpose? Are you proud of the work you're putting out for yourself and no one else? Because other people are going to take it however they want. But if you're putting stuff out that you're proud of and want to get out, you're not going to get burned out by it. You're going to continue to light up creating versus doing it just to do it. So I always try to keep that for myself too, so I don't lose that in my platform either. So.
And I think having someone with a disability having their own platform is very powerful, because it gives you agency in telling your own story, and like you're not, you're in control, and you do what you want. And that's really, so there's a lot of like outside lenses into disability that are just really patronizing, infantilizing, all those words. But, what you're doing is powerful. And it is educating people. And that's very important because you want people to learn about disability from somebody who has a disability, not like, a random story on CNN or something.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
So you are a lifestyle influencer, and you obviously share your own specific experiences. One thing we talk about on this podcast a lot is the way that, as people with disabilities, there is almost we're almost kind of forced to become advocates because of an inaccessible world and having to explain who we are and what we need. And I think we had talked about this with you when we talked before this call, there can be a pressure to kind of have the answers of how to fix the world and how to make it accessible. Do you feel those kind of pressures to have the answers or to be specifically a disability advocate? And how do you keep your content true to yourself instead of just what pressure thinks it should be?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And again, it's kind of a very fine line where with my content, sometimes there's things I'm just telling a story of what happened to me. And a lot of people will expect me to end the video with a solution or know the answers of what systemic changes need to be done for something as simple as, I post all kinds of things. Let's say accessible transportation is one of them, or flying. I just had an experience where I was almost denied getting on a plane because of my scooter. And I'm going to make a video about it. And, of course, there's a few solutions I can think of, train your staff better. But I think me as just a consumer, an individual flying, I'm not going to take down an entire airline for it. And that may be a larger example. But I think for me, I try to be very honest about how I'm learning on this journey, just like everybody else. And while I've learned a lot, one from my own lived experience that I'm always learning from, I've learned a lot from other people. I try to follow disability news and all of that. But at the end of the day, I'm still a regular person that is not in Washington, D.C. advocating. I would love to one day. And there's definitely some issues I'm more passionate about than others. And it would be ideal for me because that is, those are issues that impact my day to day. But most of the time, doing things like going to a grocery store, like we said earlier, and let's say I'm accused of not being disabled to use the shopping or the mobility scooter, things like that. If I'm just telling a story, sometimes it's important for me just to spread that awareness, just so if another employee is in that kind of situation, they realize, okay, let me not treat someone that way. And it's not this major overhaul of the way things are. So yeah, there's definitely a fine line. I try not to be complainy about it, but I get comments all the time of people, well, what would you do in this situation, and all of that. So while I appreciate it, it is a lot of pressure for someone who is just someone living life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people get wrong about disability is we're experts in our own lives. We're experts about our specific experiences, but it doesn't mean we have all the answers. We're not, well, some of us are, but most of us are not engineers, so it's we can't have all the answers. That's why we have to have everyone helping us.
Yeah, exactly. And I know I used the example for travel earlier, but there's so many different categories of life that I experience that we all do. So that's such a great point. Like, we can't be experts at everything. We can share what we need and just hope it's supported and reciprocated on the other end. But yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Okay, check this out. But did y'all hear my phone ringing in the background?
Yeah, but it didn't like overshadow you talking.
Okay.
It might be in the episode, but it's fine. We live in real homes. Things happen.
Okay, cool.
Honestly, maybe we'll leave this in.
Yes.
This is authenticity. Yeah, no, I think that I just like appreciate what you say, Erin, about like the, we're experts in our experience, and sometimes it can seem like because you have a certain disability, you're like an expert in that whole disability, which kind of leads perfectly into one of the questions I have for you, Chelsea, that I watched a video of yours where you were talking about the fact that CP, like autism, which I didn't actually know this, but is a spectrum illness and is a brain injury, so that it affects different people differently. So in the video that you were talking about, like not comparing, and that there's no need to be like disabled enough. And I've certainly felt that with being autistic, like having almost imposter syndrome in my own identity, which seems a little like silly to say, but is how I feel. So have you ever felt that, and how do you like deal with that, / what do you have to say to people who are dealing with that?
Yeah, definitely I deal with that even today. And I think, as you said, CP is so different from person to person. And I always try to make that very clear on my platform too. If there's any new parents with a child with CP, I don't want them to look at my stuff and be like, oh, why is my kid not doing this or that? I want it to be very clear. It can be very more different, whether more mild or more severe. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. But I used to feel like, oh, I'm not disabled enough because I'm not using a wheelchair every single day, or or before, just, oh, I could still walk. I'm not disabled enough. I don't feel like I maybe belong in a community, which of course now I feel so silly about and feel so differently about. But I think now my view on the entire topic is, you are entitled to feel how you feel, and no matter which way your disability impacts you, whether it's mildly or severely, it's still part of you and your experience. And I think there's so many quotes out there, just because the person next to you is having a worse day than you, it doesn't take away your bad day. So I think it's just accepting that your disability is what it is, no matter the level, and knowing that you still deserve to feel the way you feel about it, and you still deserve to have the accommodations you need, even if the next person may need a little bit more or less accommodations. So basically, all in all, your disability is valid no matter where it kind of ends up. And that's definitely how I feel about myself now too.
Yeah, I thank you for saying all of that. I think that's like really important for people to hear. And I think that sometimes people think that there's like not enough space in the disability community. Like you're going to take up too much space. And like I've talked to friends who are dealing with different health things, and are almost afraid to use the word disability, not from the lens of like thinking that disability is a bad thing, but from the lens of like, well, I don't want to say I have a disability when there's people who have it so much worse. Like, I don't want to take up space. And like, just going off of everything Chelsea just said, I just want to add that like we're not going to run out of room. Like, it's join
the club.
Yeah, join the club.
Join the party.
We need members. Like,
yeah.
And we need vocal members. And like,
yeah.
I often think about like people who use glasses or contacts, and that's like, people would not consider that in the realm of disability for some reason. Or I think about like how many adults struggle with like knee pain or back pain and are dealing with these things but are afraid to use the word disability. And I know for me, like when I struggled with mental health stuff, I wouldn't use the word disability. until I got my autism diagnosis. And then once I did, it was like, wow, I wish I had let myself be a part of the disability community so much earlier, because it's an incredible, welcoming community. And we're all like trying to make the world more accessible for everyone. Accessibility genuinely benefits everybody. So the more people we have working towards it, it's certainly not a problem. And like, even if you just need to wear eyeglasses, you understand that you have this adaptive thing that helps you live life. So join in the fight for everyone to get their needs met.
1000%. And I think it's kind of liberating in a way too, because then once you kind of accept it, you can dive into that part of your identity or the way it impacts your life. And you could choose to learn about it, you could choose to not, but at least you have those, let's say, answers. And then you can go immerse yourself into the community and meet people that are going through similar things as you. And that just is so validating in itself, because you realize you're not alone going through this thing. And then you also just have the realization that it's okay to ask for accommodations and it's okay to ask for help, which I think a lot of people struggle with in itself, which I do too. But the more I accept all of my CP and the things that come with it, the more I'm able to focus on, okay, like I can get help in this way and it will just help me live life a little easier. So
yeah, absolutely. That's totally agree. And I think I really hope that there's some listener who's listening and is like, okay, I think I'm gonna accept my identity. Like,
me too.
Because yeah, we're a cool community for real. Like, we're
I
a
agree.
blast.
So, Lily, did you want to talk about Disability Pride Month?
Yeah, I was going to say, we're on identity. We might as well transition perfectly into this. Listeners, this is a special episode. By the time you are listening to this, it will be July, which is Disability Pride Month, which is a very exciting time to all of our disabled listeners. Happy Disability Pride Month. And Chelsea, we're super excited to have you as one of our special guests for the month, because I think you do such an incredible job with like showing disability in a way that does make like me, it makes me feel pride for sure. Just a little side note that I want to share. Chelsea, you came and spoke with Easter Seals. I think it was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And it was when I had just started working at Easter Seals. And you spoke to us at like an all staff meeting. And it was that talk that you gave that made me decide that I wanted to disclose with the rest of the staff that I was autistic.
Oh
And
my gosh, you're gonna make me cry.
I hadn't said anything yet. And it was that talk. You were just so like bright, and you had a personality outside of being disabled and intertwined with being disabled. And it was just so incredible. So you were a big part of my own disability pride journey. So just wanted to share that with you and say thank you for being you, because it was a big thing for me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I can't tell you like how happy that makes me feel. Especially because I used to work in the corporate world and, used to work in different organizations. And that version of myself back then, I didn't speak up and say the things that I needed, which obviously now I would never do. But that just made my day. So thank you for sharing. And I think it's so important for people to recognize that it's okay, and also it's equally important to make sure the companies are able to accommodate and accept and stuff. But yeah, thank you. That's awesome to hear.
Yay, I'm so glad. So then diving into it, what does disability pride mean to you?
I think we kind of touched on it a little earlier, but mainly just accepting yourself and all the things that come with it. I think disability has shown me, the more I've dived into this community, how beautiful it can be and connect you with people who do have those shared experiences and maybe navigate life a little bit differently, but it does not take away the value or quality of life whatsoever. And I think I used to always feel the need to not necessarily fight against it, but to prove to other people that, oh, I have a disability, but I could still do X, Y, and Z. Where now that I'm accepting of everything and I have leaned into this identity with CP, it's not proving it to other people. It's just like, yeah, I have CP and I do these things and I make it happen just like so many other people with disabilities make it happen and their communities that support them. So I think it's just accepting that part of yourself, not being ashamed of it, tapping into your people, whether they have a disability or not, to feel empowered to talk about the things that go on in your day to day and just owning it, I think is a big part of it. There's no need to hide.
I love that. Totally. 100%.
And there's something in like owning it that is like pride kind of, it's okay if you don't necessarily feel the pride right away. Like it's owning it can be a step towards that. We last month, June, in our LGBTQ pride episode with Spencer West, we talked about that, like, it's okay to like say, I'm proud of my identity, even if you don't necessarily believe it yet. Like you can say it until you believe it. And I think that like fits into everything we're saying here, that like you can just own who you are. And I promise that when you take ownership of like your needs and accommodations and stuff, that's where pride comes from. You can't just like, well, maybe some people can just choose to turn pride right on, but I really do think for me, pride came in that like standing up for myself and saying like, I need to do this to take care of my brain. And it was like, oh wow, I just showed my brain and my body that I'm going to take care of it. And like that to me is where my disability pride comes from, is when my brain and body can trust that I'm here to take care of it and to like accommodate its needs, not to try to like shove down and hide anything.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's such an important aspect of it that I didn't say before. But I mean, obviously it's not always sunshine and butterflies. There's definitely days that are hard and there's days that you're like, why? I personally try not to, go down that rabbit hole too much, but it is important to just own it, every part of it. And like I said before, just like the community aspect of it is so important. And I think people that try to resist it are doing a disservice to themselves sometimes. And everyone's on their own journey, everyone's on their own timetable. I'm definitely not the person I was when I was in my teens and things like that. So take as long as you need to get there, if you ever get there. But I do think it's important, just what you said, owning it and diving into it, all of it.
Yeah, I know, Erin, we obviously talked about Pride even last season. It's obviously one we celebrate every year because it's a big deal for us. Erin, do you have any new updates of like what disability pride feels and looks like for you?
For me, oh geez. Well, it's been a journey. I think I mentioned like in past episodes, I know I have, talked about how like I didn't always consider myself disabled, which sounds ridiculous because obviously I am. But growing up with like outdated charity stories about sad disabled people, that wasn't me. And that's what I thought disability was. But it wasn't until I met a community of people who were disabled and shared their interests, their hobbies, their stories, that I was like, oh, this is disability, and this I'm okay with. So I just came into that, and every year I just learn so much. Like even from Lily, I've learned so much, and it's part of my journey, and I'm just really happy where I am. And like you said, not every day you're like, disability is great. If you're like in pain or something, but everyone has bad days. It's not like specific. to disability always.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying you learned from me. I feel like I learn from you every single day. And like this podcast has been such a big part of my own disability pride journey. Cause I mean, exactly what you said, Chelsea, with like community. It really is finding people you can share these moments with. And like, you know, there's even just in the last 30 minutes we've been recording, there's been so many times that one of us has said something that the other two have, you know, made a face that shows like, I know exactly what you're talking about. I have absolutely dealt with that. And yeah, I think that community is really important, and it's okay if your community is like listening to this podcast. Like you can find stuff online or following people like Chelsea online. Like that's a great start to just get to see disability every day and see disabled people laughing together and like enjoying their time. Well, that kind of perfectly brings us into our next section of the podcast, which, you know, this is an Easter Seals podcast, repping my Easter Seals shirt. So in this final section, we like to talk about the Easter Seals pillars. So Easter Seals is working to bring equity and access when it comes to community, healthcare, education, employment, and transportation. We've obviously talked a lot about community and the role it plays in disability pride. Going back to kind of talking about your work as a content creator, what parts of in-person community have you been able to find online? And like, what does community in a virtual space kind of look like and mean to you?
For me, I will say, so before social media, I really didn't know anyone in my personal life with a disability besides myself, and no one in my family is disabled. And of course, growing up, I knew a few other kids with disabilities, but none I was really like close with. So social media has opened up such a new door for me in the way that essentially all of my friends now with disabilities I've met on social media. And I'm very fortunate to have met a bunch of them in real life now too. But a lot of them really started online and really just in the comment sections of my posts or their posts. And like I said before, I always try to make it clear, like I'm not one representative of every person with CP or every person with a disability. So I, from the beginning, always thought it was really important for me to familiarize myself with other people's experiences, whether they're familiar to mine or not. And it's really helped me with my platform, but also just in my everyday personal life. Identify the different things that people need. But it's also just been really great personally, just having these friendships and relationships that have been able to grow. I am always looking to find new ways to join or meet different people, whether it's in person or virtual, but I just find such a big value to them. And I'm really appreciative of social media for that. Because I know social media isn't always a positive place, but I've definitely somehow lucked out and found that kind of positive aspect of it.
That's awesome. And I'm so glad you were able to find those people. And like, yeah, there's obviously downsides to social media. We're not like trying to say that there's not, but in the disability world, it really is like, I mean, I think that the massive strides that we've seen in like disability culture being more seen throughout like Hollywood or in literature. And like, I think those strides, social media has something to do with it. And just even like connecting us with each other. Like, I think that's just the best part of social media. And like, even though social media can be scary, it can be really wonderful to meet people online. If you're a listener and you're like, man, I don't even know where to start meeting people online, I will shamelessly plug an Easter Seals initiative right now. We have our ES Gaming Discord, which is a phenomenal place to meet other disabled gamers if you play games. I'm not even a gamer though, and I love being in the Discord because it's just like a great place. For real, I know we've said it a million times in this episode, but like finding your disabled people is game changing. Like obviously have non-disabled friends and they're great. I love them. But my disabled friends have really changed my life in terms of learning to accept myself and learning more about myself.
I'm trying to think if I have any non-disabled friends. I don't think I do.
You're
I actually don't
exclusive.
have a lot of friends.
Ooh.
So another part of Easter Seals is our commitment to accessibility and inclusion in healthcare. And you posted on YouTube about seeing a neurologist for the first time. And in the video, you said, "My body has been giving me all the signs that I need to get additional support." And you also mentioned that support for CP is usually only like centered around children. And so I'm wondering, what has CP healthcare looked like for you, and how do you stay in communication with your body's changing needs?
It's a little tough, to be honest. I think even today, a lot of the research and resources and people that go to school to become doctors and PTs, um, with any kind of specialization for CP is normally for children. And I always say, obviously, I'm very grateful for that. I was a child once, so greatly benefited from all of those resources. And I definitely think there is so much more that can still be done for children, and preventative measures and early intervention and all of that. Definitely don't want to take away from that. But I think, once you hit the 18 mark, those resources drastically drop, and a lot of the research stops there too. And I think the education of even the medical professionals, at least from when I was a child, they didn't really have that much information about like, what is my body going to be doing in different stages of its life. I was always kind of told CP itself doesn't change. So I always thought my level of mobility would stay the same. And just certain things I just always was told as a child, I didn't even think to look out for, I guess, the older I got. That I'm kind of not saying I'm learning the hard way, but kind of just going through it without any kind of awareness. And I think, part of a huge reason why I like to share so openly about my journey of going to a neurologist, or my knee arthritis and neck pain and stuff that I've been talking about recently. It's not to scare younger people with CP, but it's just kind of things I wish I maybe knew a little bit more about when I was younger. And if there is ways for them to maybe exercise a little more or do certain things to reduce the, let's say, symptoms from getting worse. Because like I said before, like I was always kind of under the impression like this is how it is, it'll be kind of status quo. In hindsight, that's a little ridiculous because whether you have a disability or not, everyone, as you age, your body starts doing things. You have setbacks, and obviously with CP it's just expedited a little bit, or maybe a lot. So yeah, the main issues I have is, I'm in my 30s now, and it's just finding people in the medical space that have knowledge about CP, which I think most people with disabilities have to deal with regardless. But it's most of the time I'm having to educate them about what CP is, or they don't specialize in it, and things are very specific to the way I move, the way I can't move, and stuff like that. So finding like a physical therapist is even hard to do, because a lot of the PTs in the adult space, like not working on pediatrics, they focus on car accident recovery or sports injury, where I can get if I get a prescription for CP, they're like, all right, what are your results in 6 weeks? Like, I'm not trying to just like repair a broken ankle. It's lifelong. I don't need a 6-month prescription. I need a forever one. So I think those are the obstacles I find, is really just finding people that either do have the knowledge or are willing to sit there and listen and figure out solutions with me. Because like we said before, I don't know everything. I definitely don't know anything about the medical space. I don't have like a doctor background or anything like that. I really just have my lived experience. So yeah, I think it's just finding those resources and the people that actually study CP. It's really hard to find.
Yeah, and that's an ongoing thing with
Yeah.
disability in
With
general. I think
everybody. Yeah.
we need more disabled doctors.
Yeah.
Is that's something I like truly believe in, and we need to make med school more accessible to people with disabilities, because that's the best way for doctors to understand disability, is for doctors to be disabled. Like, I think that
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
important. And yeah, I think that that is such a common experience, that like feeling like you have to be the one explaining your disability to your doctor, which my older sister is a doctor, and like she was in school for so long. And sometimes I'll be talking to her about things related to autism, and I'm like, how are you in school for like 12 years and never covered this? Like,
Yeah.
like we really do
Yeah.
need more disability trainings, and
Yeah.
nothing about us without us, like led by people with disabilities.
Yeah.
I want to circle back about finding healthcare, as an adult with a disability, a specific disability, because like, I have muscular dystrophy, and literally, I turned 18, and they were like, okay, you're done. And then you're just stuck with there's no like adult specialist that knows muscular dystrophy. And I think this to do with like life expectancy, but that is so outdated that like I'm 40 years old and I'm thriving. So
Yeah.
get your shit together. Like,
Yeah, and it's like a horrific self-fulfilling prophecy, the like outdated life expectancy thing, because it's like, well, that's not going to get better if there's not care for adults.
Yeah. 1000%.
Yeah, I do hope that that's like the next phase we see in like disability acceptance in the mainstream world, is like just a better understanding of the fact that disabled kids grow into disabled adults.
Yes. I mean, even if you Google CP, it's like the largest children's developmental disability, but it like all the language everywhere you look, like the CDC and everything, it's just children, children, children. And I think that in itself is a big opportunity, because the children grow up. So yeah, I think that is a huge issue and opportunity that I hope gets figured out.
Absolutely. And I do think that, like the work that content creators like yourself are doing will lead us there, because you've got hundreds of thousands of followers. There's no way that none of them are doctors.
Yeah.
Like, there's got to be some in there that are thinking to themselves, "Oh, I don't know about this as an adult thing." So I do hope that and when we see like adults with disabled adults being represented in films, like you hope that doctors see them and think like, oh wow, I'm only picturing children. Well, yeah, that's a big one, and is definitely a reason that Erin and I are proud to work at Easter Seals, because Easter Seals work is at all ages and stages of life, and I think that's super duper important to have places that don't just let you go when you turn 18. So shout out Easter Seals there, and thank you, Chelsea, for this whole episode. This interview has been amazing. Before we end this, I don't want to end on the healthcare note, because that's something we don't have to solve. But, we obviously talked a lot about pride. I just would love to end with a final thing you have to say to any of your followers or any of our listeners who might be struggling with their pride or are like excited for Disability Pride Month and want to celebrate? Do you have any like last words for them?
Ooh, I feel like we touched on so much, but I think kind of going back to what you said, it's kind of liberating to own who you are. And I think, you know, my own personal journey, once I hit my mid-20s and really started exploring my disability and not just living with it, my life transformed in such beautiful ways, where not only it introduced me to other people, it helped me learn so much about myself and my own relationships and the way I navigate the world. So if anyone listening, is on the fence of exploring that aspect of yourself, I'm just a huge advocate for going for it. It just has positively impacted my life, and I hope that through my content and through this podcast and all of your own personal work, whether that's therapy or whatever it is, I hope that you're just able to love all aspects of yourself and know that the people around you that accept you for who you are the right people for your life too.
Whew, what a soundbite right there. Bravo. That's incredible. Listeners, go follow Chelsea on Instagram at Real Chelsea. Is it the Real Chelsea Bear?
Real Chelsea
At
Bear.
Real Chelsea Bear. Go follow her on Instagram. I promise it'll make your feed awesome. And Chelsea, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. It was a delight to get to talk to you. I can't believe our time is already up. I'm leaving this with a smile on my face. And, listeners, we record this in advance, so it's not quite Disability Pride Month for us yet, but I am so excited for this to come out in July. Happy Pride Month, listeners. We love you. We hope you love yourself. See you again next time on another episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong.
If you liked what you heard, go ahead and subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you to our listeners, and as always, thank you to Easter Seals for giving us the space and resources to share such authentic conversations from within the disability community to our listeners.
And we'll see you next time for another episode of Everything You Know About Disability is Wrong.
Everything you know about disability is wrong.
This is a podcast brought to you by Easter Seals.
We actually work for Easter Seals, but maybe our listeners don't know what we do.
That's true. Easter Seals is leading the way to full access, equity, and inclusion for disabled people and their families.
And did you know we've been doing this for more than a century?
This includes helping disabled people find meaningful employment and addressing healthcare needs for all ages.
We're proud to serve communities across the country and ready for the next 100 years. For more, check out easterseals.com.